Hey guys, welcome back. You know, about a week ago, I came home from a drive in my Crown Vic that I built, and somebody noticed that there was a puddle forming under the car. So of course I'm irritated. And it made me think, you know, sometimes people will come up to me and say there's something leaking under my car, but I don't know what it is or how important it is. So I figured I'd let you guys know a few tips to see if you ever are in a parking lot or you notice a puddle in your driveway, you'd be able to know what the problem is. Okay, so first thing you have to know is if something's leaking under your car, and maybe let's say the stain in the driveway is about this big, well, then that means you have a puddle actually about this big, because the fluid expands and it makes it look bigger than it actually is. Okay, so if you're leaking oil, of course, oil is brown, and you'd be able to almost tell that by the stain in your driveway. Now, if you go and the stain is red, then you have to be careful because that's your transmission. And an engine that takes 5 quarts of oil can be a half a quart low, but your transmission really cannot be low. So my thought is if you had a pretty good red sized puddle under your car, you probably actually ought to either call somebody that knows something or have it towed to a shop, because you can lose a transmission really quick today because transmissions are not what they used to be. They're not 3-speed automatic transmissions. People have upwards of 12, 13 gears in a transmission today. The other thing would be power steering fluid. Now, power steering fluid comes out looking sort of like oil, but it's a much lighter color. Let me think here. A big one that I've noticed people having at times is antifreeze or coolant. Now, if you're in Arizona, you know, or Southern California, maybe Southern New Mexico, people use water as coolant because they don't have the freezes that we have here in the Midwest. But because we have such cold weather, we put antifreeze in with our water. We usually mix it 50-50. So what you're going to end up with, if you have a leak, it's going to be a green puddle. It's going to be maybe your water pump could be leaking. You could have a radiator that's leaking. Now, if you have a radiator that's leaking, you open up your engine, you can see the coolant cap. It is marked coolant. Never take that off when the engine is hot. Never do that because it's pressurized and it's really, really hot. When the engine cools down, you can open it up and put some more water or antifreeze into it and drive to your nearest shop to find out what's wrong, because you don't want to overheat your engine and then, you know, it could cost you a couple $1,000s, when if you have a leaky water pump, that might cost you $300. So in reality, if it's green or red, you really should have somebody look at it before you take it back out and drive it, and you should probably have your local mechanic look at that. The other day, my car was actively pouring liquid out as I was parked. Now, most times you'll find out that because the systems are pressurized and you have an oil pump that's pumping oil, or a water pump that's pumping the coolant, you'll notice the leak when you stop the car, because everything is pressurized and it's going to leak out onto the driveway. When you're driving, it's pressurized so high that it's kind of missing the place where it's leaking. Well, when I looked at my car, the biggest thing was, you know, my friend asked me, how are you going to know where the leak is coming from? Well, right off the bat, I realized that it looked like oil. So that was either power steering fluid, brake fluid is also can come out kind of a dirty brown color, and that's one where if you do notice it's coming from one of the 4 wheels, you do not drive that car. 100% you do not drive that car if you don't have brakes. But back to my issue in the driveway. My friend asked me, how are you going to know? Because any car that's got 10, 15 years on it has some road grime underneath on the engine. So it's very difficult to actually see where the leak is coming from. Plus, you can have a hose up here and 3 or 4 different pieces of suspension. So by the time that liquid hits the suspension pieces, it might not show coming straight down. There is no straight down. It always has to land on a few different surfaces. So what I did was I jacked my car up and put it on jack stands. Let me tell you, I insist on saying that you have to put your car on jack stands. There is no putting a jack underneath of your car and getting under the car. You must have jack stands, and I feel like I need to say that because I do have some friends that will get under their car with just a jack, and that is extremely dangerous. You have to have it resting on jack stands. And once you do, get a piece of cardboard, put it down, get on your back, slide underneath, and here's what you can do. You can go to the auto parts store and get some degreaser. Simple Green works somewhat, but really engine degreaser, or if you don't have engine degreaser, if you have any oven cleaner, you can use oven cleaner. So after you get under the car, spray the whole bottom of the engine everywhere with the degreaser or the oven cleaner. Then immediately take yourself out from underneath the car and let it drip. And as it drips, all the oil and grease that's on the engine will come off. So the engine will be much, much cleaner. And while the car, again, is on jack stands, someone can start the car for you and you can be looking underneath, and you might be lucky enough to see a hose or a fitting that the fluid is actually coming out of. That's what happened for me, luckily. Luckily, it wasn't a big deal or a cost. My friend started up the engine for me. I was on my back and I noticed that I just had a soft line, rubber line that wasn't tight enough and it was causing it to leak. So I was able to tighten that up. My father-in-law's F-250 that I've talked about before, his 86 F-250, the transmission cooler lines had rusted. Well, I was on University, which is one of the main streets in town, and the transmission fluid went everywhere. And because, like I said, all of these systems have pumps. So once you have a hole or a big enough of a break in a line, it will literally just pump all the fluid straight out of your car, and it will happen really quickly. I'm promising you that. So when I looked at the lines, the hard lines, they were steel lines. They had rusted pretty bad. So I just cut them clean and then got a piece of hydraulic extension hose, put that on, and I was able to fix the truck. But again, transmission fluid, red everywhere. And that's the other thing you have to be careful of. If it's red, you really don't want to drive your car because one, your transmission is low and that's not really very good for your transmission. But number two, transmission fluid, the red fluid, is very, very flammable. It will light up quick and in a hurry. Oil, here's the deal. Like I said, cars can leak oil, half a quart, the car will still run and you can just top it off, but your transmission really can't be very low before you start to have your gears slipping, and then transmissions today are $6,000, $7,000. So you should, like I said, take it to a shop. So just remember, oil is brown, brake fluid, you would see it coming from all four wheels, that's brown. Transmission fluid is red and coolant is green. Green, that's what you have to remember. Green and red, those are the two that are the most dangerous to be low. So I hope this helps you out. But just remember, if you see a stain about this big, that doesn't mean that you're dumping that much oil. It moves its way out. So you could have just a little drop and it would look like more than it actually is. I tightened my hose up and I don't have any problems now. So I hope that this tip helps you guys out to be able to maybe diagnose some things on your own and to know what's important and what's not. All right, guys, thanks.